On today's episode, Dr. Liz and I welcome back to the show Drs. Don and Carrie Cole from the Gottman Institute. We tackle all kinds of topics for a stronger marriage connection, including being more intentional, keys to stress-reducing conversations, how to keep your connection with kids, and when you become an empty nester, and so much more. Don and Carrie Cole are licensed professional counselors in Seattle, Washington. They founded the Center for Relationship Wellness and have worked with the world-famous Gottman Institute for nearly 2 decades. We hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome, friends, to Stronger Marriage Connection. I'm psychologist Dr. Liz Hale, along with the beloved professor, Dr. Dave Schramm. And together, we have dedicated our life's work to bringing you the best we have in valid marital research, along with a few tips and tools to help you create the marriage of your dreams. Now, we're still in the first quarter of this brand new year. Not that long ago, we all took stock of some of our hopes and goals for 2025, and some even made some New Year's resolutions. But now let me ask you this. Did you sit down with your partner and take the same New Year hopeful approach with them and do a couples check-in and check-up? Of course, any time is the right time to evaluate your relationship. It doesn't need to be on New Year's Eve or on your anniversary. Well, backed by popular demand to help us successfully review and restart aspects of our relationship in the new year or a new month or a new day is a couple we met well over 2 years ago now here on Stronger Marriage Connection. Doctors Don and Carrie Cole are founders of the Center for whose therapy approach is based on over 40 years of you-know-who, Dr. John Gottman's scientific research. Welcome back, Don and Carrie.
Thank you.
Thank you
for having us.
Just an honor to have you back.
Yeah,
And
we're so
happy
excited
New Year.
to have you back by popular demand. Thanks so much for bringing this idea of a relationship evaluation to our discussion today. I think it's such a critical topic to be able to check in regularly with each other. I love this idea of using what you have as an 11-point relationship checkup questionnaire to evaluate our strengths and our challenges. One of the 11 areas you bring to our attention is to evaluate how fully invested we are in our marital relationship, not to the exclusion of family members, but regarding creating a healthy balance with them. So I'm curious, what are the signs that determine you're not too close, you're not too distant with family, where it just feels just right?
Well, I think it begins with whether or not it feels like friends and family are intrusive into the relationship, right? So if they're always showing up unannounced, hanging out for far too long, right? And it feels like you can't have a life outside of them. That's kind of a clear sign. And to be hanging on the phone all night with friends or family members, in some ways that creates a wall or a distance in between your partner and yourself. You can't have a family life if you're always on the phone with somebody else, right? So those are some thoughts.
Yeah, there are ways that we can turn away from our partner, to use Gottman's language of connection and disconnection, that we can turn away from our partners without even realizing, sitting, we're supposed to be watching TV together, hypothetically, and maybe interacting around the show. And one partner is, doing this with the phone constantly, and it feels like, well, do I even have access to my partner? So, to be thoughtful about this idea of giving and, starting interactions and giving attention to those, what we call bids, those attempts to start interactions. All that is so very important. And, just going back to the lab, we know that the successful couples, the happy ones, 86% of the time, they were able to get and exchange attention with their partner in little micro moments, kind of little moments we don't even think about, like Carrie's talking about. But they add or subtract from the emotional value relationship. So 86% is pretty high bar. Nobody's perfect, But, you kind of get this expectation that if I seek an interaction, that I can get it. And that if my partner seeks it, I can give it. That's kind of a basic.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
And when outside stuff can really break that open sometimes or interfere with relations.
I'm so curious about this whole family piece, Don and Carrie. How can we course correct? I recently have met a couple, and from the beginning of time, I bet they've been married almost 20 years. From the beginning of that marriage, both families have interfered. Both families have played a key role in their marriage, and it's going to be the demise of them. I'm having a very hard time getting their attention, of having them course correct and making some new boundaries. I'm really bringing things back to just the two of them, drawing a tight circle around them. Do you have some ideas? What if a couple really has let things get out of control with family or friends? Where do you start to try to bring it back? Maybe you could help me help them.
Well, I think that to have a loving conversation first with your partner, because I think they need to be on the same page about this and an understanding and an awareness, and then decide together what boundaries they're going to put on external, influences in their lives. And then I think very gently and lovingly tell the people that they need to set some boundaries with. We love you. We love you dearly. And we really need to focus on our own relationship and rebuild our relationship because, we've been struggling a little bit lately. So I hope you'll understand when we say, I'm sorry, we can't attend. I'm sorry, this is family time. So to, as lovingly as possible, kind of set those expectations about what they will and will not do, right? And then they have to be consistent and follow through with that. If they're always making exceptions, then people really plow right over boundaries.
One thing I would add to what Carrie's saying, I think there's a prior step, which is even before we the couple themselves decide, I absolutely agree, couples decide together, what should our boundaries be and how should we address this with family? They need to have a conversation of how this feels. The loneliness, the frustrations, maybe even the anger, the sadness that can come from the distancing that's happening between the couple. When we make changes, they start at the emotional level. I understand my partner's pain. I understand my partner's feelings. I understand my partner's needs. That's the motivation for change. And so I think that prior conversation, one of our mottos is, understanding precedes solutions. So really to take time to understand what this dynamic is doing to us and to me as a person, then we can work on a deal, a compromise, a strategy. Hey, people do believe in New Year's resolution, so you can always kind of put it under that umbrella. Hey, we're doing a New Year resolution.
Nice.
So it's a good time.
We hope for your support, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And in this case, with this great couple who my heart breaks for them, they both have overshared way too much, right, with their families of origin. So what do you suggest, maybe just in a nutshell, that they do when family members now say, so how's it going? How are you two doing? What's a new way to set a new precedence, Don and Carrie?
What would you think, Carrie?
I would thank you for asking. Yeah, thank you for asking. We're working on it, and let it go with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Our therapist has told us not to engage you on this.
Yeah.
Always blame it on the therapist.
Funny.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. And then guess what? This couple did that. And guess who I heard from? One of their family members.
Did you really?
Yeah. I mean, bless them. I think they all have really good intentions, and yet it just is so messy, right? The more people we let in between us, the messier it gets. Yeah. Oh, lovely. Thank you for that help.
Yeah. Hey, let's tackle another topic in your 11-point evaluation. This one is developing an identity as a couple. What are the signs, Don and Carrie, that a couple has created their identity? And maybe what are some signs that a couple hasn't yet?
That's a good question. It's been such a long time since we wrote that thing. I don't remember what the points were. However, what comes to mind is that in some ways there's a balance between the individual and the couple. Okay. And we create a sense of shared meaning about what's important to us as a couple. And so we define that, everybody wants their life to have meaning and purpose. I think we need that individually. And I think we need that as a couple. So how can, who are we? What do we want to be about? Are we a religious couple? Are we a couple that is involved in the community and giving back to the community and right
politics?
So there's all kinds of ways that we can really identify as this is who we are and what we are about. But they do need to have some conversations about that. What are our shared goals here? Because there are some couples who end up living really parallel lives. There's not, they love each other, but there's not a whole lot of interaction between the two of them. And they have all of this separateness, right? And then there are other couples who are like always together and always, but it seems like they don't have a life or any sense of directions or goals or anything that brings meaning to their lives. So those are my thoughts, Don.
Yeah, the idea of shared meaning does come in here, but you know what I was thinking about as you were talking is the study at the Sloan Center a few years ago that talked about how they were looking at couples, double, both partners had jobs and they had kids, so it was that group. But that defines a lot of people. And of that group, 90% of the time, other than sleeping, the couples were not in the same room. They spent less than 40 minutes a week in conversation. And most of those conversations were logistics. So this study really shows just the demands of a busy life and how that keeps us disconnected. And just having conversations like, hey, what's your bucket list? We got a cute little tool called open-ended questions. Got like 70 questions on it that are questions like that. What adventures do you want to have? And you just select from this card deck and ask each other questions. Carrie and I, we haven't done it much lately because we don't drive as much as we used to. But we would do that in the car. You can get it on a phone app, this little card. And just to open up the idea of actually conversing about things that don't just come to mind in the busyness.
Mm-hmm.
Any other ideas, my friends, that you've seen for couples where you've helped them bridge this gap where they have just continued to live very parallel lives? And that's so easy to do. I really appreciate Gottman's research that with every baby that comes along, as much as a gift that is, there's a drop in satisfaction. There's less time, less money, less resource, less availability. It's tough to kind of balance against that, I imagine.
We see a relationship demise. Well, if you do a time analysis of where divorces occur, in the fifth year, And then there's another one in the 15th to 20th year. There's a second bump. And that's the one where couples have lost touch with each other. The kids are now teenagers or older. The empty nest is beginning to be a reality, and they have nothing together. That's the kind of divorces you see in that second bump. And that's sad, because these are generally people who have not just love each other, but they've invested the majority of their lives with this person. And now it's failing, it's coming apart. That's sad to see as a therapist. We see. So one of the things we do is really help couples build rituals of connection. Intentional opportunities for connection, not just we'll get to it if we can connections, but intentional plans. Like, you want to talk about stress reducing conversation? That's sort of our number one recommendation. Carrie, you want to tell them about that?
Sure. The stress reducing conversation is kind of a time limited conversation. It's kind of the "how is your day, dear" conversation. And this was really stumbled upon by another researcher named Neil Jacobson. And so he didn't want to use it in his therapy because he didn't think of it. So John asked.
The couples created it on their own.
And so he didn't want to use it, but John asked if he could. So we used this for reducing conversation. And what happens is that somebody will start this, they talk about a stressor outside of this relationship. So it could be about work, it could be about a family member, about politics, anything outside of this relationship. And there's a speaker and a listener. What usually happens is that we get two speakers and no listener. So there's one identified speaker, one identified listener at a time. So the speaker begins and talks about their stressors of the day. And the listener is just to be curious, maybe express some empathy, try to find out, what that must be feeling like. It's like, oh my gosh, that sounds horrible. We must be so upset. I mean, that's as good as that has to get, right? And then to ask another question. And we like to encourage open-ended questions instead of just, regurgitating, the day, and kind of this, this happened and this happened and this happened. We ask the listener to invite them to go deeper in the conversation. So what was the worst part in that for you? What are you telling yourself about this situation? If you could say something to anyone, what would you say? Right? Maybe you won't say it, but if you could, what do you wish you would say? So it's really a way of helping the speaker be a little bit more introspective. And sometimes when we have room to talk about the issue, we can solve it for ourselves, right? So there are actually two rules in this conversation. One is don't solve the problem when you're the listener. That's harder than you might imagine. And the second rule is don't side with the enemy. So don't play devil's advocate. Don't try to get your partner to see that other person's perspective, because then the listener becomes the enemy. They join the enemy camp, and that's not good. And that usually shuts down the conversation. So we want this conversation to just be curious. And one of the things I love about it is that it's a low cost, high reward conversation to have. Because when you're the listener, you're not any involved party. So you can just be curious and be your partner's best friend. but it also gives the listener an opportunity to develop their listening skills. And that's something that I think we all need help with. It's hard to keep the focus just on the speaker without chiming in your 2 cents or, relating it to something that I know over here, which gets the conversation off track. So it's, it helps, I think, 2 people. It helps the speaker be introspective about the day and really kind of process through what happened so that they can have the opportunity to let it go. And then there's room for other things throughout the evening. It helps the listener develop their listening skills and also learn about their partner at a deeper level that maybe they normally wouldn't. Just by
It is important. It is important to remember that people play both roles. Nobody's just, 15 minutes on a side and then you flip. But can I add how much fun? Well, one, the research on this, there's been research done in Switzerland on this, that this is really, really helpful for couples. And then the other thing I'd like to add is it's fun if you build a ritual around, we're going to do this while we walk the dog. Every night we walk the dog and we're going to have this conversation. Always going to go sit out on the back patio and turn on our heater on our deck. Turn on the heater and we'll have tea and, so we look forward to it. And it's not just something that slips in, if we can have time for it, but we preset the time. And there are many other rituals of connection that we encourage couples. But I just want to add, Carrie, and you notice this, I'll bet, how many times we have couples talk to each other as part of their initial evaluation in therapy. We have them talk about a problem, try to solve it. We also have them just talk about their day or their week. And it is amazing it's a 10 to 15 minute conversation. It's amazing how many times that just runs up onto the shore. They have no energy for it. They have no topics. They run out in 10 minutes. They don't know what to say when they're just asked, just talk to each other for 10 minutes. And so what Carrie was saying about learning the skill of interest and asking questions, being involved, it makes a huge difference. And like any other skill, it's better when you do it.
So this conversation is really about a 20 to 30 minute conversation, 10 to 15 minutes per person. But there's a lot of benefit in it.
Yeah. Which is much better than Don was saying earlier. I can't believe that some of these couples, it was 40 minutes for the entire week. And it was maybe logistics. Like, hey, are you picking up the kids, right? What time is this? But this is intentional. I love that word. This is intentional sitting together. I'm not going to try to fix it. And I'm not going to try to argue with you about it. It's compassionate listening.
We'll be right back after this brief message. And we're back. Well, let's dive right in.
Go back to the New Year's resolution. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to get in shape. Right? That's a common. I'm going to lose weight and get in shape. How many people say that in gym? Right?
A lot.
Right? Okay. How many people have ever gotten in shape by saying?
Very few.
See, the answer is 0, actually, because you don't get in shape by saying, I'm going to get in shape.
That's right. Yeah.
You get in shape by changing your behavior. And the way I like to say it is, hey, if you want to run a marathon, go do what marathon runners do. If you want a powerfully connected relationship, go do what the couples who have that do. And they have these kind of conversations.
Love that.
Yeah. And another thing that I love about this conversation is it's not about conflict, right? It's about partner's best friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. That's beautiful. I love it. And I hear about stress reducing conversations quite a bit, and it's not on the Gottman card deck
No,
app,
it's not.
is it? We'll have to put some. We'll have to find. I don't know. Please send us something if you have it, Don and Carrie, that would kind of lay this out a little bit. I'd be so honored. We could add it to our site.
Yeah,
if you
there's
can.
we talk about this we actually practice it in our workshops with couples, and obviously we incorporate it as a therapeutic change for couples to make it.
I do have a cheat sheet, Liz, that I can see, but something that I said that I give to the couple, as a way of helping them get started and helping. People don't know what questions to ask, or even how to express empathy, right?
How to respond, right? How to respond. That would be lovely. We could attach it here to Stronger Marriage Connection. It seems like every relationship, Don and Carrie, is also challenged by a crisis, right? Life transitions, losing a job, a death in the family, sadly, or a serious accident, or other significant events that can test even the strongest relationships. What are the signs that we have successfully navigated a crisis? And what are the signs that show we have allowed this crisis to cause harm? Going back to the 11-point challenge.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the best way, now this is a post conversation. It's a thing that we call glorifying the struggle. And when we talk to couples as they're beginning therapy, or even back in the lab days when they were analyzing couples, they did what was called the oral history interview. Tell me about how you met. Part of that is tell me about the struggles you've been through. So couple talks about the struggle, but how did they talk about it? It was so hard when we had to go through bankruptcy. I didn't know how we were. You know what? You were there. And we were pulling together. In some ways, that was some of the best years of our marriage, even though they were horrible. But there was this unity, fighting together, that kind of language. That's what we mean by glorifying the struggle. But then you hear the other, right? When the baby was sick and I felt all alone. Being alone in distress is about the worst thing in the world.
You're right.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of what the stress reducing conversation is meant to counter on a day-by-day basis, but you're talking about now on the bigger life events. Being alone, that's the kind of the opposite of glorifying the struggle. So do they feel lonely in the struggle, in the battle? And if so, that's a good diagnostic sign that they need to find in each other a new way of interacting around the problem. Let's say it's an ongoing problem, sick kid or whatever, that they are not alone.
I hear that sometimes even in people in which there's been a cancer diagnosis. And so the partner doesn't want to bring up the cancer diagnosis or talk about, it's just like if we just avoid talking about it. And when I ask them questions about, how are you managing this cancer diagnosis, there's this, we don't talk about it. Well, that leaves both people scared and lonely. They're scared to death. I might lose the person that I love. I might lose my life. So, I think healthy couples are finding ways and talking about the scary things, talking about the hard things, talking about their pain with one another. And what we've learned is that talking about your emotions actually shrinks them down to a more manageable level. It doesn't maybe make them go away, but it certainly, once you identify them, you talk about them, you know what? We've been scared before. We've been really sad before. How do we manage those feelings, and how can we help each other and be present for each other in those moments? And really, most of that is just about, it's very therapeutic to just be present and engaged, so that, like Don says, they're not so alone.
Mm-hmm. So it's the loneliest of lonelies, isn't it? To be married and to feel alone. I think it's just some of the most painful times, like you said, Don.
Especially during the times of life that you're talking about, because as much as we don't want to accept this, that is the norm.
Yeah.
Person or the couple who goes through life without any shipwrecks, that's abnormal, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The norm is we're going to hit them. It's going to happen. That's the norm.
Not if, but what, right? Not if, but what.
What and when. Yeah, it's going to happen.
Full foundation of trust is, will you be there for me?
Yes, right.
And that's one of the pillars that our relationship is built on. Will you be there for me? I love the way Don is talking about that lately. He is saying trust is thinking for two. So with every kind of decision that you make that with your partner's best interest at heart.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I like that. What about another one? Another transition for many couples is, hey, our relationship's going great, and now we're bringing a child into this. I remember this, my wife and I, we've been married 26 years. We brought our child, and I thought, whoa, what has happened now? It changes the dynamic. We're going to be grandparents. In July, our daughter and son-in-law are expecting, so this is our first. Yeah. What do you do? How can you help couples kind of success? And there's a program, right, about this, bringing baby home. Give just a few tips for couples who are in that transition of bringing a child into the relationship.
You want the quickest one?
Yes.
Touch. Physical touch. Physical touch reduces postpartum depression. Physical touch. Loving, not sexually demanding, but loving physical touch. Massage, the little micro touches of the hair, the little, if there's a lot more, obviously. But if you want it, the one quick, get those couples in touch.
Oh, I love that, Don. Yeah. Carrie, anything to add?
The couples who were the most successful were the ones that were not child-centered. Okay. Really tempting to make the child the center of the universe. And when they do that, they lose touch with each other. And all the focus is on the child. And it's like, we'll put the relationship on the back burner. We'll get to us when, and that's when you see 16, 20 years later, who are you? So these couples still continue to have these connecting conversations. They hire babysitters and leave that infant with grandma and go out on a date, so that they still stay in touch and in tune with one another. And they don't store up arguments, so when there are little things that are going wrong, they're attending to them quickly, either in the moment or soon afterwards, but they're not letting a lot of things store up.
Yeah, but Dave, you're absolutely right on the understanding that it is a major transition for many couples, and the numbers are between 2/3 and 3/4 of couples that they're not that they divorce at that higher rate, but that the satisfaction goes down during those late pregnancy, early years.
Yeah, I know many husbands who they feel neglected. Many men feel And again, I'm just a man, so I don't know the other perspective, but it feels like many men feel like, hey, do you remember me? Type of a feeling. Is that common?
Yoo-hoo.
But then I'll let you speak to the women's perspective of that, Carrie, but I hear a totally different experience from that, which is, where are you?
Yeah.
I'm having to carry all of this.
Yeah, that is true, especially if a woman is breastfeeding. So that's something that he can't carry or shoulder or help with. Right? So in some ways, the father might feel pushed aside, and the mother feels this extreme burden, right? Every 3 hours I've got to breastfeed. What? And then there's the pumping and the preparing all the things, and so yeah, they can both feel very, very lonely in that process. So to find ways, for him to be involved, right? With the feeding, with, changing the diapers, with even the house care, when she's immobilized because she's having to sit down and feed the baby, right? So there's a lot of ways that they can, find action.
But to be the big missing factor so often is the appreciation.
Appreciate.
I'm doing all this and you don't see it. You don't say it. You don't appreciate. And we see what we're doing, the efforts we're making, but we don't appreciate the efforts the others make. And I don't know. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of couples as a gray-haired therapist. And guess what? I don't know that I've ever seen a distressed couple that felt that they were being appreciated by their partner. I think this is universal. And it really takes hold, Dave, during this time of transition to parenthood, that I don't feel like my partner is appreciative, because people, when they feel appreciated, they'll lift a lot of weight. That's and when they don't, they'll resent every weight they have to lift.
Yeah, I've seen that in the workplace as well. Actually,
Sure.
When you see something, say something. Yeah, let them know. Let me flip the script now. Now the children are on their way out, and you talked about kind of that 20 or 15 to 20 years. 3 of our 4 children, for example, have launched. We have our son, junior in high school, so it'll be a couple of years, right? And he's gone. What do you recommend to couples kind of getting ready for that phase of empty nest phase of intentionally keeping that connection together?
Take that, Carrie.
So
I talk too much.
I
so
my share. Well, I think it's time to really reassess your, who are we and who do we want to be in this second phase of life, right? The empty nester phase, and to have some conversations about that. What do we want to do? For some people you're going to have a grandbaby. Is it really important to be an involved grandparent? Is now your time to go and explore the world, the things you couldn't do when you were, newly married and broke, and then raising all the children, so now is an opportunity maybe to pick up some new hobbies, to, become adventurers. So I think it would be important to sit down and say, what would you like the next, I think it's really important to do this ever so often. What would you like for the next 5 years of our life to look like? Right? What would be important to you about that? What are your dreams? Sometimes we put our dreams on hold for the sake of raising our families. Maybe somebody wants to go back to school. And I never thought I would do that after I got my master's degree, but I ended up going back and getting a PhD. And Don was very supportive and nurturing and, and really helped me through that process. So what would be individual goals and dreams, and what are our goals and dreams as a couple?
Great question.
Yeah, I'm real big on this whole idea of rituals of connection. What would it be like for a couple like you're talking about here to have a retreat? We do it in business. Religions have religious retreats where we sit back and re-examine. Let's have an us retreat. And, go to a couples workshop. We have good ones, but they, go to a couples workshop or just go rent a room for a few nights and ask each other those kind of future oriented questions. What do you want? And at the risk of one of the things that we know is that men in heterosexual relationships, and this is changing, but men are much more likely to assert their dreams than they are to listen to hers. And we know that is a problem that we as the guys probably really ought to think about. Have I really asked her dreams? Not that his don't matter, but have I really listened to hers? So what would I do for that couple in that phase? Hey, go to a retreat and let's figure out what the dreams are.
We'll be right back after this brief message. And we're back. Well, let's dive right in.
Another area of evaluation you mentioned, Carrie and Don, is the area of anger, conflict, and differences. How safely can they be expressed where you can just let your guard down and be vulnerable? What are the signs that each partner is allowed to have and express their own views? And what are the signs that it's not safe to express yourself?
Well, if anytime somebody expresses their emotions, the other person gets angry or shuts down or walks off. So if you're, I think it's important first to address, what the problem is appropriately by using a soften startup gently. This is how I feel about what situation and what I need, because there are ways that people can start out. You always, you never, and you're the problem. So attacking and blaming. So the 4 horsemen, that's criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. If those occur, then this is, sign of trouble for the relationship. And it makes talking about struggles and conflicts unsafe. So we have to be gentle in our approach in addressing the issue and make sure that, talk about how I feel about the situation and not about the person. And then what you need, what could happen differently that would feel good to you. And then, for the other person to listen non-defensively. So instead of saying, no, I don't, or well, you do it too, or it's not really my fault, to really take it in and say, you know what, you have a point. And yep.
That makes sense.
Those words, whenever
that's my 3 magic words.
Say it again.
That makes sense.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
I can feel
if Carrie's bringing me her upset feelings and I listen and say, okay, that makes sense. I can understand I may not agree with them. I may not agree with your evaluation of what's happening, but you're not, you're from your point of view, that makes sense. So, if people can look for that in their partner, how can I understand this? But I've also heard John Gottman talk about it this way too. I've heard him say, when my partner's in pain, the world stops.
Oh, I've heard. Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah, the world stops. There's nothing more important than understanding and responding to my partner's pain. Now, nobody's 100% successful, including John Gottman. Except my wife. She's probably pretty close to 100%. But yeah, when my partner's in pain, the world stops.
Yeah.
And I tune in.
I love it. Hey, this has been awesome. Before we let you go, we like to end with a couple of questions. The first is in honor of the name of our podcast, Stronger Marriage Connection. What do you each feel like is the key? If you're to narrow it down, there's lots of things, obviously, but is there one that each of you would like to mention as a key to a stronger marriage connection? Let's start with you, Carrie, and then Don.
Well, I think having the capacity to listen to your partner's emotions, both positive emotions and negative emotions. I think having the, we'll call that carrying capacity, but if you're able to hear those, I think that that goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. That's powerful. Thanks, Carrie.
And the one which kind of builds on that, is the idea of repair.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody messes up. Even my wife will say the wrong thing, will do the wrong. This happened yesterday. He had a misunderstanding, some hurt feelings that had to be repaired. That's an essential difference long-term between couples who make it and couples who don't. They don't just let it slide and die and fester. They repair. They fix it. They make repair attempts. Those attempts are accepted. They're successful. So learning how to repair the things that get off track, because everybody gets off track.
Yeah, takes humility for sure, right, Don?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. Learn how to repair.
Well, tell us about resources. Where can listeners go to find more resources and find more about you?
Well, we have a website called
Center for Relationship Wellness.
.com. That's where you can find us. There's also Gottman.com.
Which is probably where I would send people for content.
Right.
The Gottman Institute on various social media publish lots of really good help. We're really working hard to make relationship help available, not just to those who need therapy or seek therapy, but to the larger world. So there's a lot of really good stuff on there.
And I would say also, Don, Gottman Connect.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. You want to talk about the builder idea? The relationship builder?
For the relationship coach, there are, the Gottmans have created some videos for couples who may not need therapy, but they might need some help in the moment. So they created, through GottmanConnect.com, it's a website, and you can purchase some or all of these videos. And they're probably different price points, I would think, but, and I'm not familiar with all the price points and that kind of thing, because I was on the other end of building that, not on the pricing end, but they put together a bunch of videos that demonstrate, first they talk about why they would want you to do this particular exercise, what the purpose of the exercise is, for how it helps. And then sometimes they do it show you how to do it the wrong way, and then they demonstrate how to do it the correct way. Because you can sabotage anything, and so here's a way that you can sabotage it, and here's, if you're doing this, it's going to go off track, but here's how you can do it the right way. So they are really trying to help people, moment to moment when they're in these situations and you don't know what to do. You can go to Gottman Connect and look for a video that might be helpful for you. There's videos around how to repair conflicts. There's videos about how to have closer connections with one another, to improve your friendship. And go ahead, Don.
And to go beyond that, there are workshops. We have 3 main ones that have been developed. Bringing Baby Home, that you mentioned earlier, Dave, about for new parents. There's also the 7 Principles, which is sort of a lighter version based on John's best-selling book, 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. And then there's the Art and Science of Love workshop that Carrie and I teach, that other people teach. It's sort of a psycho-ed approach rather than a therapy. And then, of course, we have a therapy referral site on Gottman.com for people who have had at least some of our advanced training or have completed our certification process, who list on that website. People can seek out if they actually need therapy, because people need different things.
That one is called GottmanReferralNetwork.com.
Yeah. So,
yes. Okay.
But you can access that through Gottman.com. So there's lots of stuff that we've done, plus the 40-something books that John and Julie have written. And this one, hey, this is new. This is a fairly new one. Fight Right.
Oh,
Carrie and I read this before it was published. I absolutely loved it. I told Julie this is one of my favorite books of all the 40-something that they've written. I really, really like it. Mm-hmm. I think I would want every couple to read it, to be honest.
Oh, that's great.
And to our listeners, we're going to put the links that you all heard. Rex and the staff are going to put links to all those resources. Don and Carrie, we know you need to run. Thank you so much for taking time. So many insights. We sure appreciate you taking time to join us today.
Thank you for what you guys do, Liz.
Yeah.
Dave. Appreciate it. And any way we can be of help with your work in the future, let us know.
Yeah, it was a real pleasure. Thank you for having us.
It was so lovely seeing you again.
Thanks so much.
Okay,
we'll see you next time.
Bye.
And remember, it's the small things that create a stronger marriage connection. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us today. Hey, do us a favor and take a second to subscribe to our podcast and the Utah Marriage Commission YouTube channel at Utah Marriage Commission, where you can watch this and every episode of the show. Be sure to smash the like button, leave a comment, and share this episode with a friend. You can also follow and interact with us on Instagram at Stronger Marriage Life and Facebook at Stronger Marriage. So be sure to share with us which topics you loved or which guests we should have on the show next. If you want even more resources to improve your marriage or relationship connection, visit strongermarriage.org, where you'll find free workshops, e-courses, in-depth webinars, relationship surveys, and more. Each episode of Stronger Marriage Connection is hosted and sponsored by the Utah Marriage Commission at Utah State University. And finally, a big thanks to our producer, Rex Polanis, and the team at Utah State University, and you, our audience. You make this show possible. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the Utah Marriage Commission.